Welcome back, everyone. Today we're tackling one of the most fascinating character comparisons in all of George R.R. Martin's Westerosi universe. We're looking at two warriors separated by nearly a century of history, yet bound together by blood, honor, and an unwavering commitment to the ideals of true knighthood. I'm talking about Ser Duncan the Tall and Brienne of Tarth. Now, for those of you who've been following the upcoming HBO series A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, you know that Duncan's story is finally getting the screen adaptation it deserves. And if you watched Game of Thrones, you witnessed Brienne's incredible journey culminate in that powerful knighting scene in Season 8. But here's the question that keeps fans debating late into the night. Who actually embodies the ideal of a true knight better? The legendary hedge knight who rose to become Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, or his descendant, the woman who wasn't even allowed to be called a knight until Jaime Lannister broke tradition? Let's dive deep into this comparison. Before we can compare these two knights, we need to understand who they are. Let's start with Ser Duncan the Tall, or Dunk as he's affectionately known. Duncan's story begins in the worst possible place in Westeros, Flea Bottom, the slums of King's Landing. He's an orphan who never knew his parents, though he believed his father was likely a criminal. Young Dunk survived by selling scraps of meat to local shops, often going hungry himself. His life changed forever when a hedge knight named Ser Arlen of Pennytree took him on as a squire at around age 5 or 6. For the next decade, Dunk traveled with Ser Arlen across the Seven Kingdoms, learning the ways of knighthood, serving various lords including the Tyrells and the Dondarrions. Everything changed when Ser Arlan died of a chill while traveling to the tourney at Ashford in 209 AC. After burying his master, young Dunk made a decision that would define his entire life. He took up Ser Arlan's armor, his sword, and his oath, claiming to have been knighted by the old hedge knight before his death. Now here's where it gets interesting, because throughout the hedge knight novella, there are hints that maybe, just maybe, Duncan is lying about being knighted at all. Several of his thoughts and actions suggest this knighting might never have actually happened. But whether the ceremony occurred or not, what matters is that Duncan took those vows seriously. He truly believed in what it meant to be a knight. Standing nearly 7 feet tall as an adult, Duncan was an imposing physical presence, but his true strength lay in his character. He was humble, often calling himself thick as a castle wall and slow as an aurochs. He was courageous but naive, perceptive but also awkward in social situations. Most importantly, Duncan possessed an idealized, almost Don Quixote-like belief in what knighthood should be. He internalized Ser Arlan's teachings about a true knight's duty to be chivalrous and defend the weak. In a world growing increasingly cynical, where knights often abuse their power, Duncan represented something pure. Duncan's character truly reveals itself in his actions. At the Ashford tourney, he witnessed Prince Aerion Targaryen, a sadistic royal, assault a Dornish puppeteer named Tencel for the petty reason that her puppet show depicted a dragon dying. Most knights looked away. Most people feared crossing a prince, but Duncan walked right up and punched Aerion so hard he knocked out one of the prince's teeth. This single act of defending a lowborn woman against a prince could have cost Duncan his life. It led to a trial by combat, a trial of 7, where Duncan had to find 6 other champions willing to fight for him against members of the royal family. This moment encapsulates everything Duncan stood for. He didn't calculate the political consequences. He didn't weigh his own safety against the puppeteer's dignity. He simply saw someone vulnerable being harmed, and his code demanded he act. That's pure knighthood stripped of all the politics and self-interest that usually corrupts it. Duncan's journey alongside Egg, Prince Aegon Targaryen, further demonstrates his character. Despite learning that his squire was actually a royal prince, Duncan never sought to use this connection for personal gain. Their friendship remained genuine, built on mutual respect rather than social climbing. Eventually, Duncan's reputation for honor and loyalty earned him a place in the Kingsguard when Egg became King Aegon V. He rose to become Lord Commander, the highest position a knight can achieve, and he died as he lived, in service and sacrifice, perishing in the tragedy of Summerhall in 259 AC. while attempting to save the royal family from the Great Fire. According to every account, Duncan died trying to save others, remaining loyal to his king and his vows until the very end. Now, let's turn to Brienne of Tarth, born nearly 80 years after Duncan's death. Brienne is the only living child and heir of Lord Selwyn Tarth of Evenfall Hall on the island of Tarth. Unlike Duncan's poverty-stricken origins, Brienne was born into nobility, with all the advantages that brings, but she faced challenges Duncan never had to confront. Brienne is unfeminine by Westerosi standards, standing well over 6 feet tall, muscular, broad-shouldered, and flat-chested. Her face is considered plain at best, with prominent crooked teeth, a wide mouth, and a nose broken multiple times. People mockingly call her Brienne the Beauty, a cruel joke that followed her throughout her childhood and into adulthood. Every attempt her father made to betroth her ended in failure. When she was 7, her young betrothed died of illness. The next betrothal to Sir Ronnet Connington ended when he broke it off immediately upon meeting her. The final attempt involved Sir Humphrey Wagstaff, who expected Brienne to give up her warrior training and become more feminine after their wedding. Brienne's response was perfect. She told him she would acquiesce, but only if he could beat her in combat. Their fight resulted in 3 broken bones, his and a broken betrothal. Unable to fit into the traditional role expected of noble ladies, Brienne turned to what she was good at, the sword. She begged her father's master-at-arms, Sir Goodwin, to train her in combat. He made her overcome her natural reluctance to cause pain by having her slaughter pigs. As her skills grew, so did her confidence, but so did society's resentment of her. She was derided for being both too much and not enough of a woman, too masculine and aggressive to be accepted as feminine, yet still inescapably female and therefore never fully respected as a warrior. Despite all this mockery and rejection, Brienne clung to a naively idealized concept of knighthood. She believed in the old stories that knights should protect the weak, keep their oaths, and fight with honor. This belief drove every decision she made. When she won the melee at Bitterbridge, defeating 116 knights while serving Renly Baratheon, she was granted a place in his Rainbow Guard. After Renly's death, she swore loyalty to Catelyn Stark and vowed to return Catelyn's daughters to her. This oath became Brienne's defining quest. She spent years searching for Sansa and Arya Stark, facing constant danger and humiliation. She fought the brave companions, killing 3 of them in single combat. She battled Sandor Clegane, the Hound, in one of the most brutal fights in the series. She endured mockery from nearly everyone she met, from common soldiers to highborn lords. Yet, she never wavered from her oath or compromised her principles. Perhaps Brienne's most important relationship was with Jaime Lannister. As she escorted him from Riverrun to King's Landing, these 2 seemingly opposite characters, the disgraced Kingslayer and the naive true knight, formed an unlikely bond. Jaime, cynical and jaded, initially mocked Brienne's idealism, but as they traveled together, he began to see the genuine honor in her convictions. When Brienne was thrown into a bear pit at Harrenhal, Jaime jumped in after her, even though he'd already been released. He returned for her, risking his life, because she had changed him. She reminded him what it meant to be a knight. So now we get to the heart of the comparison. What does it mean to be a true knight, and who better embodies that ideal? Let's start with their understanding of the chivalric code. The medieval concept of chivalry that Martin draws from includes several key virtues: military prowess and courage in combat, religious piety and service to the faith, protection of the weak, especially women and children, loyalty to one's lord and keeping of oaths, justice and fairness in all dealings. Both Duncan and Brienne exemplify these virtues, but they do so in different contexts and face different challenges. Duncan's understanding of knighthood came directly from Sir Arlan, filtered through the lens of a poor hedge knight who actually lived by the code rather than just paying it lip service. For Duncan, being a knight meant simple, direct action. See someone being hurt, defend them, make a vow, keep it, serve your lord with loyalty. There's a beautiful purity to Duncan's knighthood because he never had to navigate the complex political machinations of court life until much later. He was a knight errant, traveling the realm, helping where he could, taking whatever work, honorable knights do. Brienne's understanding came from stories and songs. She's explicitly compared to Sansa Stark in her idealism, believing in the tales of gallant knights rescuing maidens and fighting for justice. But unlike Sansa, Brienne had the physical ability and training to actually try to live up to those ideals. Her knighthood is more self-directed, more about proving to herself and the world that she could embody these virtues despite everyone telling her it was impossible for a woman to be a true knight. Where Duncan inherited his code from a mentor he loved and respected, Brienne constructed hers from dreams and determination, making it even more remarkable that she held to it so fiercely. Let's examine their courage and combat ability. Duncan was nearly 7 feet tall and built like a wall. His sheer size made him formidable, but he wasn't naturally the most skilled fighter. In The Hedge Knight, he admits he's not great with the lance, and his sword skills, while solid, weren't exceptional compared to tournament champions. What made Duncan dangerous was his combination of size, strength, and sheer determination. He won fights through perseverance and courage rather than flashy technique. He was the kind of fighter who could take tremendous punishment and keep coming forward. We see this in his trial by combat at Ashford, where despite being outmatched in skill by some opponents, he survives through toughness and luck. Later, as he gained experience and rose through the ranks of the Kingsguard, Duncan presumably became much more skilled. By the time he was Lord Commander, he was considered one of the greatest knights in the Seven Kingdoms. But his path there wasn't about natural talent. It was about refusing to give up, continuously improving, and using his physical advantages effectively. Brienne, standing over 6 feet tall, is also physically imposing, though not quite as massive as Duncan. What's striking about Brienne is that she's genuinely skilled with multiple weapons. She uses a sword expertly, wields a Morningstar in melees, and knows how to use a battle axe. Her victory at the melee at Bitterbridge, where she defeated 160 knights, wasn't a fluke. She's legitimately one of the best fighters in Westeros during her time. Her combat ability is proven repeatedly. She defeats multiple members of the Brave Companions. She fights the Hound to a standstill in one of the most brutal combat scenes in the series. She holds her own against Jaime Lannister, who, even weakened from captivity, was considered one of the finest swordsmen in the realm. Now, let's look at how they protect the weak and vulnerable. This is perhaps the most fundamental duty of a true knight, and it's where both Duncan and Brienne truly shine. Duncan's defining act, punching Prince Aerion for assaulting Tencel, perfectly demonstrates his approach. He sees injustice, he acts immediately, he deals with the consequences later. There's no hesitation, no calculation about whether it's wise or safe. The weak are being oppressed, so he intervenes. This pattern repeats throughout his adventures with Egg. He stands up for small folk, he questions unjust orders, he uses his size and skill to shield those who can't defend themselves. What makes Duncan's protection of the weak so powerful is that he comes from them. He was a Flea Bottom orphan. He knows what it's like to be powerless, to be hungry, to be ignored or abused by those with power. His empathy for the lowborn isn't abstract or theoretical, it's deeply personal. This is why his friendship with Egg becomes so important historically. When Egg becomes King Aegon V, he's known for his reforms benefiting the common people, and that perspective came largely from his years traveling with Duncan, seeing the realm from the ground level. Brienne's protection of the weak manifests differently but no less powerfully. Her quest to find Sansa and Arya Stark is fundamentally about protecting two young girls from a world that wants to use or hurt them. Brienne understands what it's like to be vulnerable despite being strong because she's experienced a different kind of powerlessness, the powerlessness of being dismissed, mocked, and underestimated because of her gender. Her vow to Catelyn Stark is a vow from one woman to protect another woman's daughters. A promise between women that transcends the typical male-dominated power structures of Westeros. Loyalty and oath-keeping, these are perhaps the most tested virtues for both knights. Duncan's loyalty to Egg spans decades, from their first meeting at Ashford through Egg's unlikely rise to become king, until their deaths together at Summerhall. This loyalty is remarkable because it began before Egg was anyone important, before Duncan knew he was a prince. Their friendship was genuine, built on mutual respect and shared experiences on the road. Even after Egg's identity was revealed, even after Egg became king, their bond remained. Duncan served Egg not because he had to, but because he chose to, because their friendship was real. Duncan's death at Summerhall is the ultimate expression of this loyalty. We don't know the exact details, but every account suggests Duncan died trying to save the royal family from the fire. He could have fled, he could have saved himself, but that wasn't who Duncan was. He had sworn an oath to protect the king, and he kept that oath until his dying breath. That's loyalty of the highest order. Brienne's loyalty is equally unshakable but tested in different ways. Her oath to Catelyn Stark drives her entire quest. Even after Catelyn's death, even after Catelyn transforms into the vengeful Lady Stoneheart, Brienne continues trying to fulfill her vow. She searches for years, endures countless hardships, and never stops, never gives up, never says it's too hard or too dangerous. The sword Jaime gives her, Oathkeeper, becomes a symbol of this unwavering commitment. The name itself reflects Brienne's core identity. She is an Oathkeeper in a world where oaths are frequently broken for convenience or profit. What makes Brienne's loyalty even more impressive is that she maintains it despite receiving very little recognition or gratitude. She's not celebrated for her efforts. She's usually mocked or dismissed. Yet she continues anyway because the oath itself matters to her, not the rewards or recognition it might bring. This is pure honor, divorced from any expectation of payment or glory. Both Duncan and Brienne maintain their honor in worlds that are deeply corrupt and cynical. Duncan lives during the twilight of the Targaryen dynasty, a time of increasing political instability and moral decay among the nobility. He witnesses the cruelty of princes, the scheming of lords, the casual brutality inflicted on small folk. Yet, he doesn't become cynical. He doesn't decide that honor is naive or that might makes right. He continues to believe in and practice true knighthood, even when most around him see it as outdated or foolish. There's a moment in The Sworn Sword where Duncan serves Sir Eustace Osgrey, a bitter old knight involved in a water dispute with Lady Rohan Webber. Duncan could have simply followed orders and helped escalate the conflict into violence. Instead, he looks for a peaceful solution. He talks to both sides. He tries to find justice rather than just victory for his employer. This is knighthood as problem solving, as peacemaking, not just as fighting. Brienne faces perhaps even more cynicism. She lives in the era of the War of the Five Kings, where honor has seemingly died completely. Ned Stark is dead, executed for trying to do the right thing. Robb Stark is dead, betrayed at the Red Wedding after keeping his honor in most matters. The realm is torn apart by ambitious men who care nothing for the common people. Knights rape and pillage, lords betray their oaths casually. The Kingsguard, once the pinnacle of knighthood, includes men like Meryn Trant and Boros Blunt, who are little more than Cersei's thugs. Into this morally bankrupt world walks Brienne, still believing in honor, still trying to keep her oaths, still defending the innocent. Everyone tells her she's a fool. Even Jaime, who comes to respect her, initially mocks her idealism. The Hound outright states there are no true knights, but Brienne proves them wrong simply by being herself, by continuing to act with honor even when everyone else has abandoned it. One of the most endearing qualities both Duncan and Brienne share is their humility. Duncan constantly doubts himself. He calls himself dumb, thick-headed, too slow to understand complex political situations. He's acutely aware of his low-born origins and often feels out of place among nobility. Even as he rises to become Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, we can imagine he retained some of that humble hedge knight perspective. He never forgot where he came from, never let his position inflate his ego. This humility makes Duncan more effective as a knight because it keeps him grounded in reality. He doesn't overestimate his abilities, he knows his limitations. When he makes mistakes, and he does, he acknowledges them and tries to learn from them. His self-awareness combined with his stubborn determination allows him to grow and improve throughout his life. Brienne shares this quality intensely. She's constantly aware of her own awkwardness, her social failures, her physical appearance that everyone mocks. She has no illusions about how she's perceived. In many ways, this awareness makes her profound dedication to knighthood even more moving. She knows she'll never be celebrated as a hero. She knows people will always see her as a joke, as Brienne the Beauty, a cruel nickname that follows her everywhere. Yet she continues anyway, not for glory or recognition, but simply because it's right. Brienne's humility also manifests in how she treats others. Despite being an exceptional warrior, she doesn't boast or seek to humiliate opponents. When she defeats someone, she does so matter-of-factly, without cruelty. She shows mercy when appropriate. She's respectful even to those who mock her. This combination of formidable ability and genuine humility is rare and admirable. No comparison would be complete without acknowledging their flaws. Neither Duncan nor Brienne is perfect, and their imperfections make them more human and relatable. Duncan's main flaw is his naivety, what others call being thick-headed. He sometimes misses political nuances, takes things too literally, or fails to see schemes unfolding around him. His idealism can make him vulnerable to manipulation by more cynical players. In The Mystery Knight, he gets drawn into a conspiracy partly because he doesn't immediately recognize the danger. Duncan can also be stubborn to a fault. Once he's committed to a course of action, he's difficult to dissuade even when changing course might be wiser. This pig-headedness is part of what makes him loyal and determined, but it can also put him and others in danger. His tendency to act first and think later, while admirable in defending Tencel, isn't always the best strategy. Brienne's flaws are similarly tied to her virtues. Her naivety about the world and human nature is even more pronounced than Duncan's. She desperately wants to believe in honor and goodness, which makes her vulnerable to betrayal. Her social awkwardness and inability to navigate complex interpersonal situations leaves her isolated. She struggles to make allies because she doesn't know how to play the social games that lubricate most relationships in Westerosi society. Brienne's biggest flaw might be her excessive self-doubt. While humility is a virtue, Brienne's often tips into self-loathing. She internalizes the mockery she receives, believing on some level that she really is ugly, unwomanly, and unworthy. This affects her confidence in ways that go beyond humility into genuine psychological damage. Her journey isn't just about proving herself to others, it's about learning to accept and value herself. We can't ignore the role gender plays in their stories because it's fundamental to understanding their experiences of knighthood. Duncan, as a man, never has to justify his right to be a knight based on his gender. His challenges come from his class, from being lowborn in a society that increasingly restricts knighthood to the nobility. But his manhood itself is never questioned. No one says a man can't be a knight. They might say a peasant can't be a knight, but that's a different barrier. This gives Duncan a certain freedom that Brienne never has. When he proves himself in combat, people accept him. When he rises through the ranks, no one questions whether a man belongs in the Kingsguard. His path is difficult, but it's a recognized path. The destination he seeks, respected knight serving his king, is achievable and accepted for someone of his gender. Brienne faces a fundamentally different challenge. No matter how skilled she becomes, no matter how many oaths she keeps or battles she wins, she's still a woman in a society that says women cannot be knights. The barrier she faces isn't about overcoming prejudice to eventually be accepted. It's about being categorically excluded from the very identity she seeks. She can do everything a knight does, be better at it than most knights, embody the ideals more purely than almost any knight, and still be denied the title because of her gender. This makes Brienne's achievement of knighthood, when Jaime finally knights her in the show, extraordinarily powerful. It's not just recognition of her worth, it's breaking through a barrier that was supposed to be absolute and unbreakable. Jaime's words during the ceremony, "In the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. In the name of the father, I charge you to be just. In the name of the mother, I charge you to defend the innocent. Arise, Brienne of Tarth, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms." These words don't just make her a knight. They acknowledge what she's always been. Let's consider what each knight left behind. Duncan's legacy is profound and multifaceted. Politically, his influence on Aegon V shaped one of the better Targaryen kings, one who actually cared about the small folk and tried to improve their lives. The reforms Aegon attempted, while ultimately unsuccessful in preventing the dynasty's decline, came from the perspective Duncan helped him develop during their years traveling together. Militarily, Duncan reached the pinnacle of knighthood as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. He's remembered in the histories, his page in the White Book recording his deeds. His personal heraldry, the shooting star and elm tree on a sunset field, became legendary. Old Nan tells stories about him to Bran Stark generations later, and Joffrey can flip through the Book of Brothers and see Duncan's entry. But perhaps Duncan's greatest legacy is Brienne herself. The confirmation that Brienne is Duncan's descendant creates a beautiful symmetry. His bloodline didn't die out. His shield somehow made its way to Tarth, where generations later his distant descendant found it and adopted it as her own. Not knowing she was reclaiming her ancestors' arms, the ideals Duncan fought for, the honor he embodied, live on in Brienne. She is proof that his example matters, that true knighthood can endure across generations. Brienne's legacy is still being written in the books, but we can already see its shape. She's changing how people think about knighthood and gender. Characters who interact with her, especially Jaime, Pod, and even Sandor Clegane, are forced to reconsider their assumptions. She proves through her actions that women can be warriors, that honor isn't naive, that keeping oaths matters. So we finally arrive at the central question. Who's the better true knight, Ser Duncan the Tall or Brienne of Tarth? The truth is, this might be the wrong question because better implies a competition that doesn't really exist. Both are exceptional exemplars of true knighthood, each facing different challenges and achieving different things. But since we're here to compare, let's try to answer it. Duncan had the advantage of time. He lived a full life, decades of service, rising to the highest position a knight can achieve. He had the opportunity to make mistakes, learn from them, and grow. His influence on Aegon shaped Westerosi history. His death was a noble sacrifice that cemented his legend. He achieved everything a knight could hope to achieve: respect, position, a place in history. Brienne has the disadvantage of being mid-journey in the story. We haven't seen her full life play out yet, but what she's accomplished while facing barriers Duncan never had to confront is extraordinary. She maintains her idealism in an even more cynical age than Duncan's. She proves her worth repeatedly in a world determined to deny it. She changes people's minds about what's possible and what honor means. If we judge by adherence to the chivalric ideals, both are nearly perfect. They both defend the weak, keep their oaths, serve loyally, fight with courage, and maintain their honor in corrupt worlds. Duncan might edge slightly ahead in this category simply because he had more time and opportunities to demonstrate these virtues, but Brienne's consistency is equally impressive. Let's make the case for Duncan first. He achieved the ultimate recognition within the system, becoming Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. This wasn't given to him through family connections or politics. He earned it through decades of service, proving himself repeatedly. His influence extended beyond personal achievements to shape a king who tried to make Westeros better. That's legacy on a historical scale. Duncan's knighthood is also arguably pure in one sense. He was never plagued by doubt about whether he had the right to call himself a knight. Once he took that title, whether properly dubbed or not, he lived it fully. He didn't have to constantly justify his existence in a role society said he couldn't have. This allowed him to focus entirely on being the best knight possible rather than proving he deserved to be a knight at all. His death is the perfect knight's death, self-sacrificing in service to his king, trying to save others. It's the culmination of a life lived according to his ideals. There's a completion to Duncan's story that Brienne's lacks simply because her story isn't finished yet. His mentorship of Egg shows another dimension of knighthood beyond personal virtue, the ability to teach and inspire others, to pass on your values to the next generation. Now, the case for Brienne. She embodies the ideals of knighthood more purely than perhaps anyone else in her era, precisely because she received nothing for it. No recognition, no reward, no acceptance. She was a true knight for years before anyone would call her one. She did it simply because it was right, with no expectation of external validation. That's the highest form of honor, honor for its own sake. Brienne faced and overcame barriers Duncan never had to confront. The mockery, the rejection, the categorical denial of her identity. She pushed through all of it and remained true to her ideals. In some ways, this makes her achievement more impressive. It's easier to be honorable when society rewards you for it. It's infinitely harder when society punishes you for it. And Brienne chose honor anyway. her impact on other characters might be deeper than Duncan's. She fundamentally changes Jaime Lannister, reminding him of the knight he once wanted to be. She inspires Pod to be better. She even affects hardened cynics like the Hound, who seems genuinely surprised by her genuine honor during their brutal fight. She proves to a generation that has forgotten what true knighthood looks like that it's still possible, still valuable. Brienne also represents something Duncan never could, the breaking down of barriers that shouldn't exist. Her eventual knighting isn't just personal recognition, it's a crack in the patriarchal system that says women can't be knights. Every woman in Westeros who wants to fight, who wants to protect others, who wants to live by a code of honor, has a slightly easier path because Brienne walked it first. That's revolutionary in a way Duncan's achievements, impressive as they are, never could be. But perhaps the most important thing about Duncan and Brienne isn't how they differ, but what they share. They both represent the ideal of knighthood stripped of ego, ambition, and self-interest. They don't seek glory or power. They don't use their skills to dominate or enrich themselves. They genuinely believe that might should be used to protect the weak, that oaths should be kept, that honor matters. In worlds filled with Tywins and Littlefingers, Gregors and Ramsays, people who use power for cruelty or personal gain, Duncan and Brienne stand apart. They're reminders of what knights are supposed to be, what the whole system of chivalry was supposedly designed to create. They make the ideals real through their actions. Their shared bloodline, confirmed by George R.R. Martin, adds a poetic dimension to this. Brienne carries Duncan's physical traits, his height and strength, but more importantly, she carries his spirit. The ideals he lived by, taught to him by Sir Arlen, somehow survived through the generations to find expression again in his descendant. It's as if true knighthood itself has a bloodline passing from Duncan through unknown intermediaries to Brienne. The fact that Brienne doesn't know she's Duncan's descendant makes it even more meaningful. She didn't inherit his ideals because someone told her she was his granddaughter many times removed. She found those same ideals independently, constructed the same code of honor, because when you're truly good, when you genuinely care about justice and protecting others, you arrive at similar conclusions regardless of time or circumstance. So who's the better true knight? My answer is that they're equally great, but represent different aspects of what true knighthood means. Duncan represents the classical ideal, the knight who rises through merit, serves with distinction, and leaves a lasting legacy through his achievements and influence. He's the knight of legend, the story told to inspire future generations. Brienne represents the revolutionary ideal, the knight who proves that honor and virtue aren't dependent on gender, status, or recognition. She's the knight who fights not for glory but for principle, who maintains her ideals when it would be easier to abandon them. She's the knight who changes the world simply by refusing to be what the world says she must be. If Duncan is the perfect embodiment of what knights traditionally were at their best, Brienne is the evolution of what knights could be, should be, freed from arbitrary restrictions based on birth or gender. We need both examples. We need Duncan's story to show that the ideal is achievable, that people from the lowest origins can become the greatest knights. And we need Brienne's story to show that the ideal should be accessible to everyone who possesses the necessary virtues, regardless of what society says. The comparison between Ser Duncan the Tall and Brienne of Tarth ultimately enriches both characters. Understanding Duncan helps us appreciate what Brienne is trying to achieve and why it matters so much. Understanding Brienne helps us see Duncan not just as a historical figure, but as the beginning of a legacy that continues to shape Westeros generations later. There are 2 points on a line representing true knighthood across time, proving that honor, courage, and compassion are timeless virtues. As we prepare to see Duncan's story unfold in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms on HBO, we can watch with the knowledge that his adventures aren't just prequels to Game of Thrones. They're the foundation story of Brienne's lineage, the beginning of a family line that would produce another true knight when Westeros desperately needed one. And for those who love Brienne's character, learning about her ancestor adds depth and resonance to her journey. So I'll leave you with this thought. True knighthood isn't about swords or armor, tournaments or glory. It's about choices made in moments when no one's watching, oaths kept when breaking them would be easier, courage shown not for reward, but because it's right. Both Ser Duncan the Tall and Brienne of Tarth understood this, lived it, and proved it through their actions. That makes them both better than most knights in Westeros ever were, and equals in the ways that truly matter. Thanks for watching this deep dive into two of the greatest knights in Westerosi history. Let me know in the comments who you think embodies the ideal of a true knight better, Duncan or Brienne, and why. Don't forget to subscribe for more character analysis and comparisons from the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. And if you're excited about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms coming to HBO, drop a comment about what you're most looking forward to seeing. Until next time, keep your oaths and defend the innocent. Thanks for watching.